The Art of Being Ruled. Wyndham Lewis. Original publication 1926. 1989 edition. Narrated by Skeptical Waves. Part 3. The Small Man. Chapter 7. The Ruler and the Ruled. If the problem of power is envisaged by the Soviet as Mr. Farbman has represented it to be, and as everything leads us to believe that it is, then it is clear that from the start the Soviet system must clash with democratic prejudice. So it is natural that the struggle for ascendancy throughout Europe should today be more or less reproducing the struggle that occurred in the first months of the revolution in Russia, and that the opposing camps resolve themselves into a set of men on the one side imbued with the notion of a rigidly disciplined obedience to a central authority with dictatorial powers, and on the other into a set of men faithful to the liberal, democratic ideal of the last century. But let us leave these young, not fully tried, powers out of the question. We will pursue the argument independently of controversial parallels. As it takes two to make a quarrel, so it takes two categories of people to rule a state, and however artificial at certain points the division may be, you must have a ruling caste, if only to satisfy the profound instinct and wish of the great majority of people to be ruled. To rule is a painful, dangerous, and arduous duty. It is only when it becomes too much of a pleasure that it is a danger for other people, namely, those who are ruled. So long as it is an unpleasant duty, involving a great deal of work, it is the indispensable ideal of human life. Most young aristocracies in their first generations are kept very busy and live hard, and in consequence answer to one of the principal requirements. This division into rulers and ruled partakes of a sexual division, or rather, the contrast between the one class and the other is more like that between the sexes than anything else. The ruled are the females and the rulers the males, in this arrangement. A stupid, or slow-witted, not very ambitious, conventional, slothful person, what has been called aptly homme bien sensuel, the human average, has necessarily a great many feminine characteristics. These involve him, too, in a great many childish ones. And the relation of the ruler to the ruled is always that of a man to a woman, or of an adult to a child. By man here is meant any ruler-like person, of whatever sex, age, or class. Such a division for the purposes of ruling necessitates two distinct types of life. That of the ruled must be lived on one plane, that of the ruler on another. The life of the subject will be lived concretely, stereotyped on a narrow, fashionable plan, of use for the day or time, full of kind, protective illusions, like a screen round a child's bed, full of nicely arranged flowers, little presents, and meaningless courtesies, a life of name days and birthdays, mechanical work, easy bursts of animal laughter, all tied up in a little neat bundle with a comfortable personal vanity. The life of the ruler, on the other hand, will be very unpleasant. It will be severe, full of the shock of the forces of outer vastness from which the masses are sheltered, full of incessant labor. The ruler must be completely disillusioned, a suspicion of belief and he would be lost. The cares of his numerous duties will prevent him from sleeping very much. He will not be able to regard life as agreeable in any way, or else, like Faust, it would be all up with him. Hearty laughter or anything that we associate with bourgeois relaxation would never visit him. To be a true ruler he will have paid every penalty of man's aspiring lot, a pact with the devil included. It often occurs, and we even have today a unique picture of this in contemporary Western society, that the ruler becomes a confirmed practitioner of one of Harun al-Rashid's most objectionable habits, namely, that of spending his time disguised amongst his subjects as one of them. This tendency in a ruler is very much indeed to be deplored. No good has ever been known to come of it. And such an arrangement should always be resented and resisted by the ruled. The determination to have the apple and eat it too is not the sign of a very serious or pleasant person, and he should in every way be made to feel his subjects' disappointment. The good ruler, like the good artist, can be recognized at once by the inflexible discomfort of his life, isolation, further, being essential. Here, then, we can formulate a valuable rule for the conduct of the ruled, as follows: the ruler should be made to pay for ruling in every possible way. He should be prevented at all cost from sharing in the pastimes or simple advantages of his inferiors. Rule. So be it. You should say to him, in your acts, if not in your words. Rule away, Dick Whittington, thrice Lord Mayor, Lord Chancellor, Lord King, or anything else you please, of any town you like. But if we are of different clay, then understand, Lord, that we are of different clay. We are foolish little people with whom you must not mix, shaming us with the superior quality of your superior clay. We will be your creatures, we will depend on you. But we will not live with you. Our respect prevents us from associating with you in any way. There must be no dropping into the nursery for a romp, into the kitchen for a cuddle, or into the garden for a nice pat a ball about a net. No, no, my lord. I keep my distance, you keep your distance. Go back to Jehovah on the mountain, and hobnob with your kind. We know our place. We are your servants. Recollect what is owing to your position. This system of reprisal for the odious fact of rule, or, if you like, it can be regarded as a discipline to keep the ruler up to the mark, just as wealthy people are so often heard observing, in generalizing about artists and men of science, that they should be kept poor, as this forces them to work, should be extended to every form of superiority or excellence, political, social, or intellectual. No form of person extensively imposing his will, for their good, on others, should escape. But, of course, of all things this least of all requires formulation. For people do not require any lessons in this aspect of the art of being ruled. But where our political rulers are concerned today, in Western democracies, this system of keeping your distance is very little observed. When open privilege and evident power returns, this can be remedied. At present that, like so many other things, is impossible. So the most valuable privilege and weapon of an inferior is for the time obsolete. For the sake of the ruled, that is my argument, the ruler should be forced to rule by force, ostensibly, responsibly, as does, to the great disgust of our Western liberals, the Soviet or fascist government. That all your troubles come from that charming neighbor of yours, whose bald head you see peaceably shining in the early morning Sunday sun while he waters his lawn, who is always ready with a cheery word on the weather, the holidays, the cricket score, that is what is intolerable. Riding past your modest dwelling in shining armor, at the head of a brilliant cavalcade, scowling at your nameplate on the gate, or kissing his hand to your wife as she peeps apprehensively from behind the respectfully drawn curtains, Mr. Lionel Brown, your altogether too anonymous neighbor, would be better that way. You would know which way to take him then, would you not? But we need not invoke this Timor-like figure of Asiatic despotism, as he, at all events, will not arrive for some time, if ever. The harsh and ominous words, ruler and ruled, although they must be used, are in practice infinitely tempered to the shorn lamb in our educationalist era. Education plays, and will continue to play, a much more important part in government than physical and exterior force. Force is a passing and precarious thing, whereas to get inside a person's mind and change his very personality is the effective way of reducing him and making him yours. Merely to chain him up like a dog or a slave is the act of an unimaginative tyrant. To kill him is equally meaningless. It is by taking him when he is young, and educating him, that you can secure him to yourself. The physical part of power, like the bloody part of revolution, should not be insisted on. The causes that made this great revolution or readjustment of power possible, namely science, must also continue to influence the form that power takes. Without the recent spectacular advance of science, no unity would have been possible, and small competition would have continued as the basis of social organization. The tremendous power science confers on men in their war not only with nature, but with other men, has made unity certain. But what distinguishes the new revolutionary ruler from the commercial magnate of our own democratic society is that the former is not, first of all, a money man, but an open political leader. His aims, however practical, are not entirely circumscribed by economy. The best and most ancient material of speculative thought has gone to the making of his economic picture. What was it that made the brilliant groups of revolutionary aristocrats of the last century in Russia, England, and elsewhere, revolutionary? Why did the Byrons, Shelleys, and Swinburnes in England, Tolstoys, Bakunins, etc., in Russia, become so unpatriotic and lawless all of a sudden in the cause of universal upheaval? Because revolution was on the side of philosophic thought, and also Christian thought, of course, which they had been taught as little boys. Without that they would hardly have turned with so much gusto against the society in which they occupied such an enviable position. The state of mind of the social revolutionary is the permanent state of mind of most philosophers. There are few revolutionary parties that have this permanent ideal as a dogma. The Bolshevik party had apparently this doctrine from the start, and it is said that Lenin was confronted with it by his old associates at the time of his realistic conversion. But there cannot have been many revolutionaries, ever, who possess such a radical program. All the means the revolutionist takes to reach some sort of perfection or emancipated life is only a violent mass or group expression of what the philosopher, without urging, and in the detachment of his contemplation, desires for men. Socrates did not formulate a doctrine of propaganda by deed, but he was as revolutionary as Bakunin indeed, more so, because his mind was so much more powerful. But the permanent state of mind of the revolutionary ruler will now be that of the philosopher, a more cultivated, in addition to a more able, ruling class than Europe has ever possessed as promised.